In this lesson, we'll begin applying color to our fire hydrant's line work. Alright, so in the previous lesson we finished up the line work here for our fire hydrant. Now, in between lessons I touched it up in just a few areas, and I went ahead and picked a nice red color down here that we're going to go ahead and start out with by coloring our fire hydrant. Now, if we take a look over here at our layer stack, I went ahead and reordered those as well. I've got the original work that we had done on these 3 layers in this outlines group, and I've also got a new layer here that has all of those line work layers flattened onto it, and I've named it color. We're actually going to be applying color directly onto the line work. So I tell you what, to start things off, I'm going to go ahead and sample that red color I've picked. I'm going to hit G on my keyboard to grab my fill bucket, and we're going to go ahead and begin adding in our color to our fire hydrant here. Now, I usually start by adding in flat color on top of the fire hydrant, and I'm just going to come in here and click in all of the little areas with my paint bucket, and we're going to get one nice solid wash of this flat red on top of our fire hydrant. We're going to be able to work from there. So just going to go ahead and click in, and sometimes you're going to get little areas where 1 or 2 pixels don't fill, and that's because those are sort of trapped between some other pixels, and that's okay. I'm not sure what's going on with that one. We'll fill it and fill these last 2 little pixels right here, and we've got solid flat color throughout the entire fire hydrant. But we're not done. We're not going to stop there. I think at this point it's important to go ahead and talk about determining a light source, because we're going to begin picking some other colors here for shadows and highlights. But before we do that, we need to know where our light source is going to be. So if we zoom out here, I want to go ahead and for the purpose of this lesson, let's just go ahead and say that our light source is going to be sort of above and to the right, and maybe just a little bit in front of, so that light is going to be shining right here on this right side. So I tell you what, let me go ahead and just grab a nice yellow color here that we can use to represent our sun, and we'll just drop that in right about there. Looks good to me. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and let's go ahead and grab the red color that we started with here by alt-clicking that using our pencil tool, and I'm going to come over here and get into my color picker, and let's go ahead and pick some lighter colors here that we're going to use for highlights. Now, typically when I'm coloring an object like this, I'm going to maybe use no more than probably 2 levels of highlights and maybe 2 levels of shadow. I think that's going to give you ample detail for something low resolution like this. So we know that highlights are going to be a little more desaturated and a little bit lighter. I also like to lean my highlights a little more towards a warmer color like orange or yellow. So if I'm going to come up, I'm going to just watch these 2 color boxes right here, and I'm going to come up and get a little bit lighter color, maybe just a little bit more yellow in it. Right about there, and I think that's going to work for my first swatch here. So we'll go drop that in right there, and I tell you what, let's go ahead and pick one more lighter color here. Again, going even more desaturated, even lighter, and maybe even just a little more, just a tad more yellow in it. Right about there. So that'll be my second level of highlight, and we'll drop that in right about there. And I'm going to go ahead and alt-click on the original color, and we're going to pick some shadow colors now. So I'll go ahead and access my color picker again here. Now with shadows, we know that those are, not only are they darker in value, but typically shadows are more saturated as well. So we can't get a whole lot more saturated based on the original color, but we can get a little bit. So I'm going to go darker in value and a little bit more saturated here. And I may even swing this up, and I like to add a little bit of blue into my shadows. So I'm going to swing this up to the top of my bar here, and we're going to add just a little bit of blue, and maybe a little darker than that. So I think that'll work for our first level of shadow. We'll drop that in right about there. And let's go ahead and pick one more layer of shadow here. So coming back up here, maybe just a touch more blue, and we'll go a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated here. And let's see what that looks like next to our other colors. I like to set up my color palette sort of in a little swatch pattern down here below, or wherever off to the side, just so I can alt-click and sample whichever color I want to work with. Now I tell you what, at this point I do like to come over here, and since I'm working all in one layer here, I do like to come in and lock my transparent pixels after I've got my flat color down, hitting that little pedigree symbol right there. That ensures that I'm not going to paint over here into the area outside of our fire hydrant, and really the only thing I need to worry about is if I'm painting over the line work or not. And, we'll actually talk about that more in just a little while, but first I want to go ahead and start this process by adding in some highlights. Now, thinking about the light source being right here and how that's going to illuminate our our subject here. I'm going to come in and we're just going to begin painting that in. Now, I'm going to draw this in for the most part free-handed, and we'll actually come in and clean up some of the curves later if we need to. Come in and bring that in right about there. And I think that looks pretty good. So we'll come in here and just sort of trace this outline. And we'll end up filling this in here in just a moment, but I'm getting us a nice boundary there. So we'll come in and fill that in. And we've got our first layer of highlight right there. Now, thinking about the contours of this, now this highlight may actually come down just a little bit and move sort of like that around this lip right here, being that this is a flat lip. So I'm going to come in here and paint that in, just like so. Now that we've got that sort of sectioned off, we can use our fill tool, our fill bucket, and fill that in. And let's come in here and sort of think about how this highlight's going to actually move down the perimeter of this lip. So we'll come down straight right there. If this is sort of at an angle, we might come down at a little bit of an angle, just like that. We can come in and fill those two areas in now. Looks like we got one stray pixel right there. That's okay. Fill that one in as well. Let's go ahead and leave that one for right now. And we'll come back over here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit this again, and right about the same spot as we left off, right about there. And we're going to sort of plan out for this highlight over on this right side. So again, we'll skip that right there, and we'll pick up down here. And let's go ahead and skip over that little rim for right now, and we'll just go ahead and grab our fill bucket and fill in these two areas as well. So you can see here we're starting to add in a highlight on one side of our fire hydrant. It's really important to keep in mind the placement of your highlights and shadows, because at this point your highlights and shadows are really going to play an important role in determining if this is a flat two-dimensional object or if this is going to be more of a three-dimensional object. And you know, we already have enough challenges as of right now dealing with a small number of pixels like this, so placement of your shadows and your highlights is really, really important. So we're going to come in here now and sort of place this highlight on the top of this arm right here that sort of comes out the side. So we'll go ahead and fill that in. Let's fill that in right there. And you know, right here I think that maybe the highlight would be hitting this top face of this bolt, and maybe not this face right here. So I'm going to come over here and maybe come in and do sort of a similar treatment over here on this arm. Now, this arm is pointed away from our light source, so we may actually come in and modify this highlight once we get some shadows in, just so we can sort of see how this is reacting to being furthest away from the light source. I'm going to come in and color it in a very similar fashion to the other arm for right now. We'll come in and change that here in just a little bit, but let's go in and handle this ellipse right here. Now, remember, this is a lip right here, so I'm going to come in, and I think the highlight would probably extend over to maybe just beyond the center of that. So we'll come in here and fill that in next, handling some of these stray pixels. And let's come in and handle this lower lip around the base of the fire hydrant. So if you remember how we treated this lip right here, we sort of brought this highlight out at sort of an angle, and I'm going to do sort of the same thing here. So let's go ahead and start that off just right about like that. And you know, if we need to, we can always come in and sample that red just by holding down Alt and fill in any of those extra areas. Maybe we fill in a few extra pixels on accident. So we'll come in here and just bring that down and fill this area in as well. And really quickly, we've come in and added highlights to most of our fire hydrant here. Now, there's one other area that I'd like to handle a highlight for, and it's kind of the front face of this. Now, if this light source is to the right and in front of the fire hydrant just a little bit, then there's a little bit of this highlight that's going to actually be creeping around the face of the ellipse here that's pointed at us. So I think that that's going to be a really nice little highlight to add in there. But unfortunately, it's also one that can prove to be challenging because, again, we're drawing in an ellipse. So I like to start here when I'm drawing in a highlight just by coming in and let's just fill in a base area here. Just something to start with. Now we have something that we can come in and clean up. So if we want to come in here and sample a pixel there, and then maybe come over here and fill in just a little bit more there. So exactly the same process we went through in drawing that ellipse, we're now going through that exact same process in essentially drawing an ellipse inside that ellipse. So let's come over here and maybe not quite that far. keeping in mind that we started out moving horizontally in these segments, and then by the time we get up here, we're moving vertically. So maybe we come in here and sample that color right there and add more of a vertical segment there. It's really a very similar process as to what we went through when we were actually drawing in these shapes. And you'll see me zooming out quite a bit at this point just to sort of judge the ellipse that I've drawn. And I'm not feeling that one quite as much. I think that it needs to be ironed out just a little bit here. Maybe come up just a hair more, sort of like that. And maybe we come down a little bit more, sort of like that. Anyways, you see where I'm going with this ellipse. It's the exact same process, and I'll probably clean this up just a little bit in between lessons, but we've pretty much placed all of the highlights here, with maybe the exception of this area right up here. So I'll go ahead and draw in a couple pixels here, but in the next lesson, we're going to pick up where we're leaving off here, and we're going to begin coming in here with some of our darker colors and laying in the shadows.